So this is what happens. And look down in verse 5, it says, "In Shushan the citadel, where there was a certain Jew, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away." So he's a Jew. Remember, there were 3 deportations of the Jews to Babylon. Jeconiah's taking was the second one, when the major portion of the population was taken. And this guy's grandfather had been taken that way. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was very lovely, beautiful, and when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it was when the king's command and decree were heard, and when many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel under the custody of Hegai, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace into the care of Hegai, the custodian of the women. Now the young woman pleased him, and she obtained his favor, so he readily gave beauty preparations to her besides her allowance. So she made an impression on the main eunuch, and he was giving her some extra oils and some extra perfumes and some extra advice and so forth. And as we go through the rest of chapter 2, what we find is she wins the beauty pageant. And she becomes queen. And I want you to consider something here. Esther becomes queen, but this is by deception. Because she doesn't tell the king that she is a Jew. As a matter of fact, purposely, she does not. So at least it's deception by omission. But there's something else involved here. It's downright sinful. Because it was not allowed under Jewish law for a Jewish woman to marry a Gentile. And here she is, taking a year or more in preparing to be able to marry a Gentile. And there's absolutely nothing here that says Mordecai and Esther prayed about this, or that God said, yeah, go for it. This was all their thinking. And now consider something else. The timing of this story is between the first going back to Jerusalem under Zerubbabel. You remember? Cyrus said, okay, Jews, you can go back. And Zerubbabel led about 48,000 people, and they went back and started living in Jerusalem and in the land that they had hoped for. But most of the Jews stayed. This story happens between that event and what we studied for the last several weeks about Ezra and Nehemiah going back. That's when this takes place. Which means Mordecai and Esther are Jews. They're proud of their Jewish heritage, as we see through the rest of the story. But they didn't want to go back. They liked it here. And they saw a way that, well, you know what? We could be pretty comfy. If you can be queen of the most powerful man, or at least the second most, now that Alexander the Great's on the scene, of the world, you know, you could be pretty well guaranteed that oil and perfume bath is probably going to be the way it's going to be for the rest of your life. It doesn't tell us what their motivation was, but it excludes the motivation of God spoke to them and said, do it. I don't believe it was a thing of the Spirit. I think it was a thing of the flesh. Otherwise, the Word would have let us know and explained how this could be that God would say, do a sinful thing for good ends. Doesn't fit, does it? This was Mordecai and Esther trying to take care of themselves. Hey, we're here. We certainly don't want to go back to Jerusalem. There's nothing there for us. So they must not have been heavily spiritual Jews. Actually, that's what I see here. In the last part of chapter 2, Mordecai hears about a plot against the king. And he tells Esther, and Esther tells the king. The king figures out it's true, and he's saved. But nothing happens for Mordecai. He doesn't get rewarded for it. There's no record other than the fact that he did this is recorded in the official books of the king. Okay? So now we pick it up in chapter 3, and it says, after these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And every time I say that word, I feel like Popeye. Agagagagagag. The Agagite. Haman the Agagite. Why would we care that it's an Agagite? It's very, very, very significant. King Agag was an Amalekite. If you remember the story, God instructed the first king of Israel, King Saul, to fight against the Amalekites, take the city that King Agag ruled, and kill everyone, man, woman, child, beast. Saul didn't do it. And you remember the story, he comes back with the spoils of war and with King Agag. And he let his family live. And he brings King Agag. And the prophet comes and says, "What are you doing, Saul?" "Well, I'm coming back from this great battle. What'd you do?" "Well, I've done exactly what the Lord and you told me to do. And I've had great victory." The prophet says, "Well, then what is this bleating of sheep that I hear? Weren't you supposed to kill everything?" "Oh, well, the people convinced me that I shouldn't kill them. And we're going to come and we're going to offer them as a sacrifice unto the Lord." Let me tell you something. We are not free as to how we serve God. The Lord gives us a lot of liberty because of His mercy. But we are not free to choose how we will worship God. We are not free to be considered obedient servants if we don't obey Him. "Gosh, Pastor, that seems awful simple. You're not obedient if you don't obey." And yet, how often do we live like that? We consider ourselves, man, we're right there with God. Yeah. Though we don't obey Him, even for simple things that He tells us. And Saul, that was the beginning of the end for Saul. That was where the prophet said to him, "God's more interested in obedience than your sacrifice. You're going to come with the best sheep and the best oxen and give this great sacrifice, and God will be pleased because it's the best, man." And God says, "I don't care about that. I don't care about how great your worship is, because your worship has no worth if it's not coming from a heart of obedience." And Saul's empire started going down from that point. And the prophet killed Agag, but obviously some of his family got free. And we find that in this story, this man of the family of Agag tries to do what many have done throughout history, and that is exterminate the Jews. Get rid of them. That's really what the book of Esther is about. It's Haman's attempt to wipe out the Jewish race. And so it says, all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened when they spoke to him daily, and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. Remember, that's from India to Ethiopia. It's a big area. In the first month, which is in the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is, they cast the lot, before Haman to determine the day and month, until it fell on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. And then Haman said to the king, "There's a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all the other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore it's not fitting for the king to let them remain."